Bad Bunny had a pretty good week. Last weekend, he won 3 Grammys, including Album of the Year. And then this past weekend, he set the record for the most watched halftime show ever. In anticipation of his performance, I decided to go through all of his discography, listen to every album he's released, and rank them. To preface, my Spanish is decent, it's okay, but I did struggle to understand a lot of what he was saying. However, Apple Music had a translate feature on its lyrics, so that was pretty cool, and it helped me understand basically everything he was saying. If we're being honest, after listening to his whole discography, to the Bad Bunny fans out there, don't come at me, he doesn't have a bad album. So whatever's ranked lower, they're good pieces of music. It just some are better than others, in my opinion. Without further ado, let's get into it. Number 7, we have Oasis, which was his collab album with J Balvin. This was one of his shorter album. It was his shortest album for sure. I personally thought J Balvin was a little bit better on the record, to be honest with you. I think he had a softer voice, and I think he's a bit more of a talented singer, just in terms of purely voice. This album was mostly reggaeton, which is not my favorite type of Bad Bunny song. I know that's like a big part of his music. But, and I also thought it got off to a bit of a rough start. I didn't really like the first 3 tracks, and I think there's only 7 or 8 tracks on the album. But I think it finished real strong. Some standouts off of Oasis were Que Pretendes, which had really cool production. Some of the beats, like some of the instrumentals sounded like it was almost submerged. My favorite song was La Canción. It had Un Peso, which the feature from this guy named Marciano Cantero almost ruined it, I'm not gonna lie. And without his feature, it might have been one of my favorite tracks, but it was a not good feature in my opinion. Odio, and then Como un Bebe, which was a really smooth track, and it had a cool feature from this Afrobeats musician that I'd never heard of, Mr. Easy. Now, number 6, we have Yo hago lo que me da la gana. The lyrics definitely match the title of this album. He does whatever he wants. Bad Bunny does whatever he wants in terms of the music he makes. A few notes before we get into some of my favorites off of it. Si Veo a Tu Mama has a Wii Sports beat. Like it's pretty funny. I didn't love all the features on this. Zafaera is one of the freakiest songs I've ever heard. It's absolutely wild. One of my friends said he thought he was going to play that at the Super Bowl. I said, absolutely not. There's no way they're going to let that on national TV with children watching. And I'm definitely not as high on this album as it seems like public opinion was. I looked up like what people generally thought his best album was, and this was much higher in people's rankings than my own. However, I will say the second half is definitely much better than the first half. One more thing is, for such a big artist, I think he's got not so great album covers. Like the album cover for this project, I think is horrid, like awful. And there's a couple other ones that are just like Oasis. It looks like, I know it's pre-AI, but it just looks like not much effort into it. There's a couple other that aren't great. Yeah, did not love the album cover, but without further ado, let's get into some of my favorites. La Difícil. It was a pretty fun song. La Santa. This was one of my favorite reggaeton beats I've ever heard. It was super smooth, super chill. Daddy Yankee's energy was like the antithesis of it, but in like the best like counter. It's hard to describe. Like Daddy Yankee has great energy, and this was a super chill beat, and it somehow just worked together perfectly. And he's low-key got Migos level ad-libs. Like he's a legend in the ad-lib game. Ignorantes, A Tu Merced. Una Vez, which had a pretty good feature from Moro. Puesto pa' Carlial, which was a nice song with a Mike Towers feature. Hablamos Mañana. I only really liked the outro, but the outro was one of my favorite sounds from the whole album. And then the outro track was like the Kiss little text symbol, was some of his best and most introspective rapping, I thought. Number 5, we have his debut album, X100 Pre. I thought this was going to be like all rap. Like my opinion of Bad Bunny, like early Bad Bunny, I thought it was going to be all like urban trap, Latino trap, but it was a little bit different in that he proved early on in his discography that he can kind of blend genres. For example, Tenemos que Hablar is like almost emo, almost. That's what the Apple Music description describes it as. And that project is an example of one of my like things I don't love about Bad Bunny. Sometimes I wish he would just have a softer voice. Like it sometimes feels like he's just yelling. And on that song, I mean, they describe it as emo, but it just sounds like it's so loud and almost grating on the ears, to be honest with you. But I thought the hooks and choruses were super strong on this project. Great melodies. I didn't love the song, but my favorite feature was El Alfa on La Romana. The production for the most part was very solid. However, I didn't love the Diplo song, which was early on in the project. In terms of some of my favorites and some standouts, we have Ni Bien Ni Mal, Caro, the second half in particular, Otra Noche in Miami, which kind of gave me Tory Lanez like Alone at Prom vibes. It was really cool. Si Estuviésemos Juntos, which was my favorite song off the project, Solo de Mi, Como Antes, and then Mia, which had the Drake feature, which I had of course heard before. That's a good song, a good big time hit. Number 4, we have Nadie Sabe Lo Que Va a Pasar Mañana. This was a different change of pace than what I had become accustomed to from Bad Bunny, but I liked it. It was a very long album. I did like the first half more. That may be because it just was such a long album that the second half it's just kept going on and on and on. But in terms of some standout tracks, I liked Nadie Sabe, which was a very different song than what I had been used to hearing him from. It was pretty lyrical, introspective, but also just a big flex. And it didn't really have any hooks or choruses. It wasn't upbeat at all. It was just straight bars. Monaco, which I had already had in my playlist, it was a big time hit. It's one of the few Bad Bunny songs that I was already familiar with going into it. Hibiki, Cybertruck, Telefono Nuevo, Los Beats, Vuelve Candy B, y Perro Negro. Those were all some of the good tracks that I enjoyed off of that project. Now we get into the top 3. These I thought were very, very solid projects. Not that hard to rank Bad Bunny's albums, to be honest with you. I never really had any debate about where to put everything, but these top 3 I think stand alone. Number 3, we have El Último Tour del Mundo. And I mean, I already said it, but Bad Bunny just does whatever he wants. I thought I had, like I said earlier, I thought I had figured out the basic gist of the album. But then you have songs like La Noche de Anoche and Trellas, which are just completely different than the typical Bad Bunny sound and just the sound of that album. I'm not really familiar also with any of the artists he collaborates with, except on this, there's a Rosalia feature, which of course know her, but in general, it's cool to get introduced to new artists while you're listening to a new artist. It just opens your eyes to a whole different world of music. Some of the songs I liked off this was Te Mudaste, Maldita Pobreza, which had a really cool harmonica outro that was sick. La Noche de Anoche, which I thought Rosalia killed it with her feature. Haciendo Que Me Amas, which had great writing, good lyricism from Bad Bunny. Dakiti, which I don't really like reggaeton, but this was a really solid reggaeton song. Sorry Papi. I loved Abra's Hook, and then 120. Those were some of my favorite songs off of that project. Now we get into the top 2. You already know what they are. It's just what order are they in. And number 2 for me is Un Verano Sin Ti. This was, a huge, huge album when it released. It's in Apple Music's top 100 albums of all times. I remember hearing about this everywhere. It's like a summer vibe, even though the title makes it seem like it's going to be a sad album. But then you look at the album cover, which I think sucks, by the way. The album cover and then the music, it's like his most upbeat, happy project. But yeah, like I've been saying earlier, I think I prefer the songs that sound a bit different from reggaeton and stray away from that signature reggaeton kick drum. But on this project, I think the last 10 to 12 songs are all bangers. Songs that stand out tracks, there's a lot of them on here. Moscow Mule, what an intro. Titi Me Pregunto, which was his opening song at the Super Bowl halftime show. Sick production on there. Yo No Soy Celoso, guitar, super nice on that one. Party, Aguacero, which was super chill. And I liked how he took a more quieter voice on this, and it was more pleasant on the ears, like I mentioned earlier. Ojitos Lindos, which I really like the feature from Bomba Estéreo. I hope I said that right. El Apagón, with the beat switch in it, was sick. Un Coco, Andrea, really good song. And then Un Verano Sin Ti, the title track. And then you obviously know what his number 1 album, in my opinion, was, and it's Debí Tirar Más Fotos, his latest album, kind of a love letter to Puerto Rico. I mean, this is his best work, in my opinion, clear. I don't want to say his magnum opus because I know he's young, he's got more music left in him, but this is a really, really solid project. This album felt like it really actually meant something. Not to say his others didn't, but the message behind it. And then also, I think you can hear not only his maturation as an artist, but also as a human being. A lot of his earlier stuff is just braggadocious and he flexes on everyone. But here it's he really talked about his upbringing, what Puerto Rico meant to him, and just other stuff like that. That it really showed that he had matured. In terms of songs that were standout tracks, Nueva York, Baile Inolvidable, which is what a song. That's just one of my favorites. Performito Nuevo, Vueltita, which had one of my favorite Bad Bunny features like that he's ever gotten as projects from Chewy. Great feature. El Club Turista, which was a beautiful song. Pitora del Coco, and then the title track Debí Tirar Más Fotos, which was like the big hit off of it. You probably heard it on like TikTok if you haven't like listened to Bad Bunny at all. And yeah, that is it for my Bad Bunny rankings. I will say a few notes about him as an artist. First, he really hates podcasts, it seems like. He has so many lines about like podcasts and podcasters in like his discography. It's kind of funny. And then second, if you can't go into an album like expecting anything because his track sequencing like doesn't make sense at all. For the most part, he'll follow up like a flex, like bragging song with a super sad song. And it's kind of like he does what he wants, like that one album is titled. But yeah, no, this was an enjoyable experience. You know, obviously I'd known who Bad Bunny was, and but it's nice to finally get to listen to his music. And obviously I did that, try to prepare for the halftime show. But yeah, great halftime show, great artist, won album of the year. I would definitely recommend his latest work. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it this far in the video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you on the next video. Peace.
I just wanna ball, mama, I just want it all. I don't care about the law.